Okay.
So I like that, man. It's not dark in the mornings anymore. So
This is what's this is what's on your mind.
yeah, energy.
Oh wait,
I think
is it
about a lot.
those utility bills?
Yeah.
Okay, you know that the second highest in the Midwest.
Now, why is that?
Oh, you know? Did you know that Governor Evers' Public Service Commission has put through over $2 billion worth of increases? Has approved over $2 billion worth of increases.
Really?
So every time you look at your utility bill, you can thank Tony Evers.
Now, I did see 1 month that my bill increased by $300.
Well, again, you're just too rich.
No,
Evidently, this administration thinks so.
I just think I need to turn stuff off when I leave.
Or get it. You could elect a new governor
We could do that.
and lieutenant governor to go along with it, right? You know, you could do that.
Well, talk to me.
Yeah. You know, I might know a little bit
know
about
a
that.
couple, got
Yeah,
it.
there you go. So, you know what else?
What's that?
We've talked before on this show so often about reckless driving, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And we've talked about folks who, you know, are repeat offenders who are out here terrorizing neighborhoods, right? We talked about some of the grandmothers that can't come out of their homes
Yeah.
because they're concerned about what's happening in the neighborhood.
Right.
So we talk about all these things, right? And we keep saying, like, whose job is it to actually make sure that when we put these folks away,
Right.
they stay away,
They stay
right?
away.
As opposed to the revolving door we got here in
Right.
Milwaukee, right? So the people who are supposed to make sure that that happens at the local level are district attorneys, right?
Okay.
Those are the prosecutors. When we keep
Yeah.
talking about prosecutor, right?
Yeah.
So we've got in the studio today a prosecutor, right?
All right.
There we go. Now let me tell you, you might get a clap.
Oh, you gonna get it?
It's sometimes on a delay. So depending on how much Jermaine loves the person coming in, it can be a delayed clap or an immediate clap. When his friends come on my show, apparently it's the immediate clap.
Right on the board.
There we go. So see, yours is much delayed here. So when we talk about the local level and its district attorney, right? Well, then on the statewide level, somebody's supposed to help identify the path, right? The stuff that's not going right,
Right.
making sure we get it to a place where law and order across the state, right?
Right.
That's why we get an attorney general. So today's guest is
Uh-huh.
going to actually be able to talk to us about both things:
Awesome.
district attorney at the local level, attorney general at the state level, because Eric Toney is the district attorney in Fond du Lac County. Now, let me tell you, that's about the longest somebody has had to wait. So you see,
I had to wait for the name to come out.
There we go.
Yeah. Embrace the name.
So not only get ready, because he's not only the district attorney in Fond du Lac County, and has been as one of the youngest district attorneys in the state of Wisconsin, but he also is running for attorney general. Wait, how'd you do that? Like you were
Two
no
for
hands.
One. 2 for 1.
You could just sense it
I just
coming.
thought about it.
Well, there we go. So, for all that to say, welcome, Eric, to the show, and we'll get a chance. Maria Lazar came here, and we ended up with a lot of questions just here in the studio, just about what it means to have a fairer process, a more just process. So I'm sure that we'll end up in the conversation talking to you about, like, why does this happen and why does it happen? But so welcome.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Great to be here in Milwaukee with you.
Beautiful. So, all right, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know, having been on the campaign trail with you, I know a little bit about your background, but just tell the folks, where you come from. And
Yeah. So I was born and raised here in Wisconsin, in Fond du Lac County, and I now reside in the town of Fond du Lac. I went to public school, graduated from Fond du Lac High School, did some undergrad while at St. Norbert, but grew up. My dad was a police officer. My mom worked at a bank as a teller, and then for my grandfather's healthcare company when we were growing up. And we weren't a wealthy family, but we were in a nice, safe community. My parents both had some other kind of part-time jobs that they would do, kind of a paycheck to paycheck family growing up, but was blessed with 2 wonderful parents, an older brother. And after spending time in Fond du Lac in high school, I did my undergrad up at St. Norbert in the Green Bay area. I did law school in the Twin Cities, and then found my way back home after that in Fond du Lac. And prior to getting elected district attorney in 2012, when I was 28 years old in that election, I actually spent 2.5 years in private practice. And prior to that, I had interned in the DA's office in Fond du Lac County for both summers while in law school. So I always found my way back to Wisconsin. And in private practice, I did juvenile law, mental health, criminal defense law, and also started a bankruptcy practice just before getting elected as the district attorney. So I've been, on the side of as a district attorney now, where we're protecting the community, but I've been on the other side representing clients when they've been charged with crimes and having those candid conversations and walking them through that process as well.
Yeah. So, okay. So you've done civil law, you've done criminal law clearly now. What did you think you were going to do when you grew up?
So I actually, I remember my dad showed this to me probably like 10 years ago, but in 6th grade, we had to write, what did we want to do when we grew up? And one of the things I wrote on there was I wanted to be an attorney. I wanted to maybe work on a political campaign. And so I've checked 2 of those off the box, but the third one I did not, and that was astronaut. Really love space and the universe, but it wasn't in the cards for me.
Wow. Okay. It's a little 2 out of 3 of those things kind of go together.
The other one, wow.
The third one is a little different. All right. So you grow up there, you come back. How in the world did you decide to run for district attorney?
So, I'd be representing my clients, and we'd see the way crime might be handled in places like Chicago at times where, whether it was a lack of resources or other things, people would sometimes come up to Fond du Lac, and we'd start to see an increase in crime that was starting to bother me, considering growing up in the community. And I just remembered as I was, starting to have the conversations, I was 27 into 28. And at that age, you expect somebody to say, hey, maybe not now, maybe wait a few years.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody was telling me no. And I'd start knocking on doors, and you'd talk to a family that maybe they had bought a home and they didn't feel that they could let their kids outside to play because of some of the drug dealing going on that they felt was happening in Fond du Lac. And, now remember, we had the Great Recession around that 2009-10. So this is 2012 where home prices are underwater.
Yeah.
And so some people were trapped in those homes where their mortgage was essentially upside down. And it breaks your heart when a family can't feel safe letting their child go play in the front yard, a park nearby, and really wanted to make sure that we have a community where people know that we've got their back. We're going to work to keep them safe.
Yeah.
And that's really what drove me to want to run for district attorney and just help make it a safe community.
So public safety being the first driver for you.
Absolutely. That's, probably in my DNA from growing up in that family where my dad spent over 30 years as a police officer helping protect our community. And it was, a really interesting experience, though, where you'd sit on the other side of the aisle representing people that were charged with crimes, navigating them through that process as well.
Yeah. Okay. So you got a chance to, was it a contested race? Did you have other people running for?
So it was contested. I was actually running against the incumbent in the Republican primary. And so it was a very tough race. Not a lot of people gave me they didn't think I was going to win, but I've always had strong work ethic. And so I would be knocking on doors, weekends, weeknights, and ended up having a great group of supporters that helped us win the race by almost 20 points.
Wait, you won the primary then?
Yes.
Against the incumbent?
Yes. And
by 20 points?
Just about. It was like 59-41 or something like that.
Wow.
So,
okay.
But, anytime anybody runs for office, we don't do it by ourselves. There's amazing friends and family and people in the community that step up to help us win. And I remember one of the messages that still sticks with me this day, a woman had sent me a message that she was throwing up and not feeling well. And she just I had to make sure I got out to vote for you because I wasn't going to let you lose by 1 vote.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's just really special when people are, I've got a community of Fond du Lac that's, compared to Milwaukee, it's much smaller, but it's about 100,000 people. And when that community puts their trust in you to help keep them safe and their families, that's a really special honor.
So about a fifth, sixth of the size of Milwaukee.
It's about, yes.
Okay. All right. And so you won that race. Did you think you were going to win that race?
I wasn't really worried about whether I would win or not. It was just do the things that we need to do to win. And, one of the things I've learned, and I'm sure you get it as well, when we're knocking on doors, you start to really get a sense of the community and where things are at. And I just wasn't hearing it out there for the other person, but we didn't, we don't take it for granted. But a couple weeks before the election, I was feeling optimistic, but you just never know with elections. You just have to work your way through the finish line.
Yeah. Okay. So you've been elected since you were 28. How many years now have you been in the office?
In my 14th year now as the DA.
Okay. So this has been the longest job you've had, clearly.
It is, and I'll tell you, I love what I do, and we have some of those moments in life where it kind of helps you know you're on the right path.
Okay.
And for me, that happened in 2023. And I had, as you know, had run for attorney general in 2022, and we got within 35,000 votes of winning that race, but we had gotten outspent 6-1 in the general, and it is really hard to win a race when you're outspent that much. But we got awful close from so many great supporters across Wisconsin, and I actually announced that campaign here in Milwaukee off of MLK because one of the things I've learned over the years is a stronger Milwaukee is a stronger Wisconsin. A safer Milwaukee
Amen.
is a safer Wisconsin, and so Milwaukee is the key to Wisconsin in many respects. Just given the population, the location, the wonderful people that are here, that we have to do what we can to help make Milwaukee safer, and that's why I made that announcement in Milwaukee.
So let's back up a little bit, because I know Jermaine too. We've had these conversations about things that go wrong, but we're not always clear who's responsible for the thing going wrong. I believe a number of times here in Milwaukee, specifically in the county, it's the prosecutors really just basically pleading down or allowing the cases to be pled down. Could you just kind of start back at what's the role of a district attorney? What should happen with a district attorney?
So, one of the things, and I've heard criticism about the Milwaukee DA's office pretty regularly. And I think I want to touch on that for just a minute, because I've gotten to know some of the prosecutors in that office. They're incredibly hardworking. They care about this community. They want to keep it safe. And earlier you had hit on that reckless driving topic, right?
Because just so you know, so Jermaine's son, who's now, how old is your son now?
He's 24.
Oh my God, every time you say this to me, it just throws me that you could have a son that young. So, but he was actually driving one of the main thoroughfares here in town, was caught up in a reckless driving situation where he was hit. Was it head on?
Well, from the side. So
Yeah.
the car was actually turning. So they was doing a U-turn in the street to park on the other side of the street. And the car came flying down Burleigh and smacked him.
Just got him.
Yeah.
But
How's he doing?
Well, he's doing great now. This was about 2 years ago.
Yeah, but he went through some significant collapsed lung, broken ribs. The other person that was in the car,
He had a broken pelvic, so he was in the car with his brother, and his brother had a broken pelvic. Had to go through months of rehab and then getting back into.
Yeah, so it was pretty significant, and this is happening all the time. So the reason I bring it up is because we've talked about just one of the most heartbreaking shows we've had was literally on because we talked about not just his son's situation, but a mother who called in who was still crying years after her son was killed in a high-speed chase situation here, reckless driving. So this is something that happens just way too often here in town, and so it's a particular sore spot with folks here.
I will tell you, it's not just Milwaukee, but we know. I mean, I see the stories. I've heard the conversations. I'm sorry your family and your son had to go through that. I mean, recently we had a woman 60 miles an hour plus down Main Street in Fond du Lac on a Friday night around 4 or 5 p.m. ping-ponging off cars. One or two of them started on fire. That this happens in other areas. And so then the question, when we look at the criminal justice system, there's a delicate situation for law enforcement of, should they pursue this vehicle or should they not?
Right.
And they don't know if the person could be on alcohol, drugs, felony warrants, other dangerous activity that they're doing. And if law enforcement doesn't pursue, this is the danger. And we see this move its way up north, is some people will start to do the most reckless and dangerous driving they can right when they see that officer, because they believe that will terminate the pursuit. We've seen people imagine, a 55, 70 mile an hour highway, cross the median and go against traffic because they believe the police will not follow. And so it puts our law enforcement in these really difficult positions where they want to help protect the community, but not make the situation worse. And sometimes it's a no-win situation. But when we look at Milwaukee, there was a pregnant woman a few years ago now, I think her name was Erin, that was killed in one of those situations. And so her friends and family, they formed a group called Enough is Enough. And they actually go into Milwaukee and they track these type of resolutions in court. And one of the things we saw, and I'm kind of going off memory for the percentage.
We had the woman, Jermaine, I think we actually had the woman on the show.
Yeah, she was on the show.
Yeah.
She lost her son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's the daughter, right?
It could have been.
Yeah, the daughter. But yeah, so, but she came in. She came in
Yeah,
and
sure did.
brought a guest with her.
Yeah.
And yeah, this has just been an ongoing issue about
And
how do we make these decisions.
One of the things we've seen is, I think the number was like 70-ish% that the judges in Milwaukee County were going underneath the prosecutor's recommendation
Okay.
on those sentences. And so we have prosecutors that are trying to get those cases in front of judges, and then we're seeing the judges ultimately going underneath that. And that's where, I'll tell you, being a judge is not easy. They have to make that final decision. They have to live with those things. But when the facts and the law allow them to protect the community, we need to see that our judges are ultimately doing that. And that's where I think we need to have a greater focus of paying attention to what is the judge's sentence, what is the bond that judge is ultimately setting.
Well, this has been the ongoing concern, and we've talked about this so many times on the show about people who have suffered, particularly cases where the person has been in and out of court multiple times. And it almost feels like the 20% of the folks are doing 80% of the crime, because it just seems that revolving door.
You're spot on, and I would estimate the number 20% is probably too high. It's such a small percentage of people that are creating so much of the chaos within our communities. I've seen the stories over the years from Milwaukee where parents don't feel safe letting their kids play in a park nearby, and that breaks your heart. I couldn't imagine that, having grown up in Fond du Lac. And one of the areas, this is where our Department of Justice can help, because our Attorney General's office is in charge of all of that forensic testing, whether it's fingerprints, DNA, ballistics, testing drugs, controlled substance, you name it, they're in charge of the testing. And the sad reality is they're testing significantly less, but taking longer in many of these categories compared to our Attorney General's predecessor. And on DNA, for example, on average, they're taking over twice as long, testing less, but despite having more resources.
I definitely want to get into the Attorney General's race when we come back from the break. But I know, for a lot of people, there's just this frustration. How is the system supposed to work? I know Jermaine's going to tell us a break, but if we could just quickly just talk about how is the system supposed to work? What is the Attorney General really supposed? Let me back up. What's the district attorney really on the local level supposed to do if it's working right?
So the district attorney's office gets the referrals or the arrest reports from law enforcement. We take those and we review it. We issue the criminal charges. We go before the judge to argue bond. And ideally, if they're a danger to the community or unlikely to appear in court, we've got sufficient cash to protect the community and ensure they appear. Then we get the appropriate charges in front of the judge to help protect the community. And so most cases across the state are going to resolve with some type of plea agreement. If we didn't have that, our system would be broken, because we don't have enough resources to do a jury trial in every case.
All right. So thank you. So this has been one of the ongoing issues, is why do we keep hearing plea deals? So you're telling me really there's not enough capacity, that the system would not work if everybody went to trial?
I would shudder to think of the investment it would require from the state and the counties to change that. And just to give you an idea, sometimes we can have take a shooting, for example, where there could be a plea agreement where somebody could get what's called a plea offer, but they could still be looking at over 100 years in prison from that. And so the prosecutor might say, I still am protecting the victims, the community, and giving sufficient sentencing discretion to the judge to impose a serious sentence that could put that person away for the rest of their life or decades to protect the community. But it would still be a plea agreement, but there's still the ability for the judge to have a significant sentence.
I got you. Okay. Well, I know I see those sticky fingers on those buttons. And so, Jermaine, do what you got to do, and we'll come right after this. All right, WNOV family, this is Will Martin, and this is The Difference. And Jermaine,
Yes, sir.
we've been talking here with Eric Toney, who
Yeah.
is district attorney for Fond du Lac County. I just think we often think that like serious crime happens in Milwaukee County,
Yeah.
and maybe it's a little slow and quiet in the rest of the state.
Yeah, that's the that's the feeling that people get.
Yeah, but he was just telling me, Eric was just telling me that even having just been on a jury trial
Yeah.
where he had to deal with a 14-year-old as part of a mass shooting
Wow.
in Fond du Lac County. I mean, you don't think of Fond du Lac County as being a place where that could happen.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as soon as you guys said it, I was like, huh? Like that. I didn't hear anything about that.
Yeah, and so you kind of wonder sometimes about what's happening in the rest of the state.
Yeah.
No news is not always good news,
That is true.
right?
That is
So
true.
so Eric, it sounds like you were having to deal with the same sorts of violent crime and the same sorts of offenses in Fond du Lac that can happen here.
We unfortunately see similar crime, just not at the scale that we might see in Milwaukee, given the population.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I've been seeing in recent years, we're seeing some juveniles or very young adults committing some of the most serious crimes in our communities. And we see whether kids grow up in certain neighborhoods that maybe their families don't feel safe. There's a level of violence, maybe some drug activity going on that makes it really difficult for these kids who then grow up in that culture. And they've got their parents who understandably and are trying to get them out of that environment. And then sometimes, unfortunately, by the time they do, that culture of violence is already set in. And they're not seeing that this isn't the way to move forward with life.
So what's, you've been at this now, you said 14 years, right? You are the district attorney. You're elected. Was a 4-year term.
Yes.
Okay. So you're elected and now been repeatedly reelected for office in Fond du Lac County as the district attorney. You're in charge of an office of attorneys, right? Prosecutors. How many folks are there?
14 attorneys, including me.
Okay. And what's the volume of, if you had to estimate what the volume of cases would be, what do you see in a given year?
So we're filing over 1,000 felony cases a year, and then there's a couple thousand misdemeanors probably with the criminal traffic in there. It used to be back around 2008, 10, somewhere in there. We're probably in that like 300 to 500 range, and we've seen unfortunately a steady increase of that. And one of the things we don't want to have to deal with these types of cases, and the hope is if we can intervene early enough to maybe discourage somebody from committing more serious crime. But the other piece of it is if there is, and we don't really have like a neighborhood that's dangerous per se in Fond du Lac, but when we see some of those, the bigger the community, perhaps the more likely that could be that if we can keep kids safe in their homes and their neighborhoods where they can then be safe to get to school and have that be a priority, we can drive down the truancies and hopefully drive up the test scores. But we have to have kids in the schools, and to do that we need to make sure that they're safe in their homes and communities. So
so you're seeing 1,000 or more of these felonies, right? What do you think is driving what's behind this? I don't want to call it a spike, but there's been certainly an increase over the generations of violent crime.
What I can tell you, there's studies when we look at the juveniles, and some juveniles get charged in adult court based on the nature of what they're doing or the crimes they've committed in the past. And for a juvenile, and this probably won't surprise anybody that's a parent, it's not enough that they know that there could be serious consequences. They have to believe that they will be imposed. And I think over time there's been a little bit of an erosion on the belief that that's going to happen.
Okay.
And so we don't want to see juveniles in the criminal justice system, but sometimes, unfortunately, when that's there, we have to make sure the penalties are there that maybe discourage other juveniles to not engage in that behavior, to help make sure they're getting to school and being able to live that American dream.
So as we talked about, you're 14 years into being the district attorney. You're one of 72 across the state, right?
71. Menominee and Sean will actually share one.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that. I thought by statute that they would have to have.
No, they're the one county or two counties that share.
Oh, amazing. So. Okay. So given that, what have you learned over the 14 years? Have you seen crimes of all types before you've actually had to prosecute cases yourself? You've got other attorneys in your office. What's the takeaway for you?
I think one, it's communication with law enforcement, making sure that we're trying to be on the same page with them and communicating that to the public so that they know what our approach is. Because, I mentioned when I was in private practice and I'd have criminal defendants as clients, and they'd say, well, they don't care about this here. And the important thing is for people to know we do care about this here, in the hopes that they're not actually committing the crime and that they can go on to live a wonderful life. But one of the things I've seen is our prosecutors, you're talking about the plea agreements before, we've been understaffed across the state. And so I've served as the president of our District Attorneys Association. I did that back through that 2023 budget, and we helped get a historic investment through the legislature and the governor through a team negotiating, where we were able to actually be able to hire public defenders and prosecutors because there were so many vacancies across the state. In the most recent budget, we saw another 60 prosecutor positions added across Wisconsin, including double digits here in Milwaukee County, to help spread some of that workload around to make sure that our prosecutors have the time to actually invest in these cases to make responsible decisions. Sometimes that decision is not charging a case. Sometimes it's making sure we take that case to trial or maybe have a more aggressive resolution, but it helps us invest in these cases and get the right resolution on those. And, to do that, we had to have bipartisan support from a Democrat governor and a Republican legislature. And that's one of the things I've really been focused on, is working across the aisle to help bring more public safety resources into Wisconsin, because the more we do that, the less crime we can see and the more opportunity people have in life.
Yeah. So, Jermaine.
Yes, sir.
Debo's back there, right?
Yes, sir.
He's still back there, right?
Yeah.
So, between the two of you, do you ever remember?
Start.
Hey, no, I have to start. I have to start. So, have either of you seen Josh Call here, the current Attorney General?
No.
Never. Okay. Now, just to be fair, he's only been in office almost 8 years. So, you don't think you've seen him?
I haven't.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just wonder.
I haven't.
You'd think maybe like here would be a nice place to come and talk about the job, right? At least. Maybe sometime in the 8 years. There's a little bit more time left.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. So good that we got Eric in here before he even gets the job.
Wow.
Just saying. Just wondered. So given that we have a current Attorney General, and you've talked about some of these trends of, juveniles. I keep coming back to Jermaine, some of the frustration the community has with just the revolving door. You've talked about why some of the plea deals happen. If you're running for Attorney General now, and this will be your second time running, why are you running, and what difference do you think you could make for a community, particularly like this one, where we have suffered with some really just egregious revolving door issues here?
Yeah. So for me, I knew I wanted to run again back in 2023, and it was a very unexpected, circumstances that led to that. And so I was 39 years old. I've run cross country and track in college. I've done 7 marathons. So I've lived a, generally healthy lifestyle, and I ended up in the hospital over the 4th of July weekend for a day and a half. And there I learned that I was born with a defective heart valve. And so my doctor told me that in my 60s, I'd probably need to have that valve replaced. So I get out of the hospital. We do a really complicated intentional homicide trial in July. And then in August, I was walking in my office, and all of a sudden my right ankle got rubbery, and it was just this weird feeling. Okay. And I ended up losing control of my legs, and I collapsed and fell. And I had this weird feeling kind of like moving up my body that I just didn't understand what it was. And then within probably, I'm guessing 20 seconds, it went away. So I did the dumb thing, and I just went to my desk and started working. And I started thinking more about it. And one of my colleagues, Dennis Krieger, had passed away from a cardiac issue in 2018. And Dennis had complained of some chest cold to somebody else in the office, that same week. And then he died on a Saturday. And so Dennis inspired me to go out there and try to figure out what was wrong with me. And because it's not normal to have something like that happen. And so I started seeing, what neurologists and others trying to figure out MRIs, and nothing was, not getting any answers. And then, fast forwarding into the fall, in October, I was getting night sweats every night where I'm sleeping on a towel, wearing athletic clothes. Cause it just was miserable. And finally, I got in to see the doctor in, I think it would have been early November at that point, and they heard a heart murmur. And then they did a blood culture. And so then on a Saturday, I get a call and they say your culture is positive. And so I didn't know what a positive blood culture meant at the time. And so if anybody listening doesn't, don't feel bad. I didn't either. What it means, though, is you have bacteria in your blood. And that's not good.
Wait, I heard Jermaine knew enough medical to say, like, that does not sound good.
And so when you're born with a defective valve where you're missing a leaflet, so I only had 2 instead of 3, that bacteria can get in there. And if it does, it's going to destroy your heart valve if you don't catch it. We didn't catch it before it destroyed my valve. So then I go in on Saturday, they give me antibiotics, and then I go home. And then Sunday they call me again and say another positive culture. So I come back and then they say, we really need to admit you. And so I relented, I get admitted. And then on Monday, my cardiologist comes to see me and he says, Eric, your heart valve is destroyed.
Wait, this isn't the span of a weekend.
Yes.
Okay. The span of a weekend, you go in having run races before and you come out, they're talking about they're going to have to do open heart surgery.
Yes. And that was Monday.
At 39 years old.
So my valve was completely destroyed. And my cardiologist later told me, people usually are alive for hours with a valve that's gone. I was alive for well over a week. And that, the grace of God and having, run cross country and track and marathons, my heart was strong to be able to, survive that long. And what they need to do, though, or want to do anyways, is try and have negative cultures before you have the surgery, because they don't want to put in a new valve and then have the bacteria get in there and then have to go back in and address that. Thankfully, we got negative cultures. And then so the Monday they told me I needed open heart surgery. The next week, Wednesday, I had the open heart surgery. And so what I was doing, and I think it's what a lot of us would do when you're going into a surgery like that, where they're going to keep you alive on machines, stop your heart, pour ice in your chest.
At 39.
You reflect on your life. And so I'm sitting there in the days leading into it, just thinking I'm getting to help protect the community where I was born and raised, my family, my friends, the community. It was a special feeling where I didn't have any regret. I wasn't wishing I did something else. I wasn't wishing it was a different job. I love what I get to do. And it was just a special calming feeling of just trusting God through the hands of the medical team, that if they got me through that surgery, I knew I was going to want to run for Attorney General and continue to make sure that I'm living a life that matters, that I'm getting to help people and not just sitting back and being comfortable with life, because it's too short. Tomorrow's never promised. Mm-hmm. And whenever the end of the road is for me, I want to be able to look back again and say, I know I've lived a life that mattered and I got to help people. And so that's why I wanted to get into this race again, and just the number of people over the years from across the state that have been encouraging me to run. We've got bipartisan support from over half the sheriffs across Wisconsin. We've got Republican and Democrat and independent district attorneys. The Milwaukee Police Association has endorsed me.
I think they endorsed more than just you.
Anyone else?
I seem to remember getting endorsed by the same group.
Look at that.
Yeah, first show of this year.
So,
Will Martin.
And it's just seeing that our Attorney General is considered our top cop because of the critical public safety functions that office does. And we've seen the broken promises year after year. The Attorney General's had 7 years, almost 8 years to address these issues. And unfortunately, he's been unable to do that. Now, I will say, talk about some of that bipartisan support. Being in the hospital, that was one of the most bipartisan things I've done in my life. Before surgery, one of the, they do a pre-procedure to look for any blockages. So I had the surgery done in Fond du Lac, and the doctor that's doing the pre-procedure comes in and she's like, oh, what do you do? And I'm the district attorney here. She's like, oh, that's neat. I just moved here from Milwaukee. She's like, do you know Josh Call? I'm like, I know him a little bit. And, she's like, oh, he's a good family friend.
Well, and you survived.
And I had her do the procedure. And it's just when we put public safety over politics, it's just amazing the difference we can make in people's lives to help keep them safe, help them get to school, be able to work, or even be able to afford to buy a home because that community is an attractive area where they can say, okay, I can live in this area. I can rent here. I can buy here.
So what's the difference that you could make? If you get through in November, right, you're running for the second time. There's really, as I understand it, only 2 candidates, right? You're the only candidate on the Republican side. He's the only candidate on the Democratic side. What's the difference you could make if you won this November?
Well, we have to prioritize public safety over politics. And unfortunately, our attorney general has been it seems solely focused on the political side, that he's taken his eye off the ball with public safety. And one of the biggest areas our attorney general can make a difference in public safety in Wisconsin is through the crime labs and all of that important forensic testing.
Okay, so wait, let's break this down. Crime labs. What's a crime lab do for the state of Wisconsin?
They test DNA, they test shell casings, they test bullets, they test blood, they test drugs, they do fingerprint analysis.
These are the rape kits that also go there too?
A lot of those have been sent out of state.
Oh, really?
But so, the Attorney General campaigned on forensic testing in 2018, and he has broken that promise where he attacked his predecessor on the rape kits that you mentioned. And then once the then Attorney General said that all those kits were tested, well, he said, oh, there's this more work to do on those kits. And I think the numbers, they have a website that actually tracks this data on how many cases are out there. They stopped updating the website in 2021.
Yeah, when you don't like the news, you just stop.
And there's
publishing
probably
the news.
less than 15 convictions of the 4,000 plus kits that were tested. And so, we look at, and I kind of mentioned this before, the DNA testing. The Attorney General is taking on average over twice as long to test less DNA. And when you go back to 2020, he did an interview and he said the Republican legislature gave him more DNA analysts, that his policies were going to limit the amount of DNA evidence coming in to test, and he had better technology, so there was going to be a dramatic improvement within 2 years. And now, on average, he's taking over twice as long as his predecessor. And it's just another broken promise where we need an Attorney General that's going to focus on using the resources we have, working with the governor, the legislature, to make sure that we can have a crime lab that works for all of Wisconsin. And the reason that matters is because we can't move cases forward in court if we don't have that evidence. Imagine, if I were back in my private practice representing a defendant, and it makes it really hard for me to say, you should take this offer or you should go to trial, because I don't have the crime lab evidence. I don't have the DNA report or the information on the ballistics. And so these cases stay open longer. And sometimes cash bond isn't used and that defendant is out on the streets. Sometimes when they're charged with very serious crimes, and then that victim waits for justice while new victims, unfortunately, are created.
So part of the reason we're seeing the revolving door in Milwaukee, in part, is because of the Attorney General's office in not testing soon enough or enough evidence. If you don't get the evidence back, you're going to have to let the person out, because there's only so long you can keep holding the person.
So we had an audit of the crime labs, a nonpartisan audit that was released in the summer of 2024. And what it showed, compared to 2020 to 2024, there were 7 less DNA analyst positions filled. I actually stood with our Attorney General in 2023 and worked behind the scenes with the Republican legislature to get more crime lab resources to our Attorney General, and that report said that he didn't even fill those positions.
Okay.
And so we've seen that filling those positions hasn't been the priority, but for our Attorney General. And that's one thing, as your Attorney General, we're going to make sure we're always filling those positions, that if there are work from home policies that don't allow these analysts to be in the lab working, we're going to modify those. And let me be clear, the analysts and the folks at our Department of Justice are amazing. They care about public safety. They work hard. They're wonderful people. It's the leadership that's failing them and failing Wisconsin. And one of the areas that the quicker we can get this testing done, the sooner we can get these cases resolved, having criminals off the streets or having them serve that sentence. And that's how we can help make communities safer.
So you're going to get the testing's going to you're going to get all the positions filled. B, you're going to make sure the stuff is actually tested faster. C, we're going to get the results back. So D, we actually are going to get convictions in town sooner.
Correct. And one of the other things we have to do is when we looked at that audit, the starting and kind of middle range pay for analysts was comparable to neighboring states. Our senior analyst pay was drastically lower. We need to work to raise that pay to be able to retain some of these great analysts as well. And when we see and we hear the stories of whether grocery stores and other places leaving certain communities, and sometimes it's because of the crime, that we want to make sure those grocery stores and others are able to be in neighborhoods across our state. And to do that, if we can reduce that crime, we can help allow those businesses to stay open in our communities.
So talk to me about,
I got a question, Will.
Please do, because
allow.
I saw you looking at me, so I'm always a little concerned when you look at me, Devo.
I didn't want to cut you off like that, but yes, I did. You spoke to being able to move forward with prosecution. Are there any cases that come to mind, or is there a possibility that when you speak to the testing and things of that nature, is it possible that someone could be exonerated that maybe is falsely imprisoned?
Yes. Well, that would be different if they were in prison serving a sentence. There's
Mhm.
a post-conviction process that would look at that if there was more evidence that might be tested. But one of the challenges that we see, the Attorney General has put in policies that limit. So, like, I'll give you an example. When we test items, often for DNA, they swab it, and there
Mhm.
could be a number of different swabs. So they'll picture like a firearm. You might do the grip, the trigger, the magazine. If there's rounds in there, a slide. Each of those counts as an item, and so they're often going to limit how many of those items we send in.
Mhm.
And so you may not have all of those swabs tested because we're not allowed to, depending
Mhm.
on the circumstances.
And again, this is volume issue again, right? It's capacity.
Well, so we're seeing, I think from some of the data we've seen, they're testing about 25% less compared to his predecessor,
Okay.
but they're still taking longer and
Mhm.
probably 6 or 7 of the different categories, including DNA.
Yeah.
And so we've seen the office be able to test things faster and testing a much higher volume.
But to Debo's point, if I'm, if Jermaine, I always like to use Jermaine. If Jermaine
He's the
were
perfect one to use.
there we go. If Jermaine were up on charges for a serious offense,
Mhm.
right? I almost started with me, Jermaine, and then I realized I should move over to you.
Yeah, you probably should.
Right. So, but in the case of actually being able to get to this faster, having more people working, having more of the evidence tested, it could exonerate Jermaine or others in the community who've been accused of a crime, in some cases that they have not committed.
You could think of a sexual assault circumstance where the DNA comes back and it's not the person charged. That could be a circumstance where a
Yeah.
prosecutor might move to dismiss the case. There could be other ways where the evidence come back where I don't know that would necessarily exonerate somebody, but
Yeah.
it might say, hey, we don't have enough evidence to prove this case anymore
Mhm.
based on these results. And when someone's charged, one of the things when we're charging people with some of these serious crimes, they have the right to make a speedy trial if they want 90 to 100 days, depending on the nature of the charge. We're often not going to get those crime lab results in that time to be able to meet that speedy trial demand. Now, what happens is some judges will let them out on signature bonds and then they're back into the community. Some judges may not, based on what they can do with the law. But either way, that defendant's unable to get that case resolved within that time frame.
Yeah.
And so there's all kinds of consequences, not just to victims in the community, but that the person that we're charging with a crime.
Wow, we got a consequence. We have to go to a break because Jermaine's got his fingers over there on these buttons again. So we'll be right back after this. So this is Will Martin, and this is the difference. And one thing that is never different is that Jermaine always says we got more time when we come back from the break than we ever have. And you know full well we'll be rolling right on into Al Sharpton.
Well, time goes so fast.
When you're having fun.
Yeah, we having fun. It's
Right.
Oh, you guys are great.
So this is the thing. So I know better to start a whole new topic because the next thing you'll be doing is pushing that button and we'll be in the middle of a conversation. So we're gonna make this easy.
As long as it's the clap button.
Right.
Oh, well, the clap button itself might take the 5 minutes to get to. So thank you. That's it. Okay, so now this is the lightning round. Tell us, and I'm sure you'll be back, but for folks who have never heard of you and they really don't understand what Attorney General is, what's just the basic, simple list as we close this show out? What are you going to do that is going to be different, that's going to have an impact for the average person in Milwaukee County or in Wisconsin that's going to make their life better? What can you do?
Well, I mean, it's simple. We're going to put public safety over politics. I mean,
Okay.
it's as simple as that, of making sure that those key public safety positions are filled, that we're working with our district attorneys and law enforcement to help them keep their community safe so you can enjoy your neighborhoods, your parks, and not have to worry about your safety, and helping make sure that kids can get to school and be safe while they're in school.
Okay. Now, what do you need from the community? What's your advice? What do you need from us?
Well, I'd love to hear from the community. Go to erictoney.com. You can learn more about me. There's ways to contact the campaign.
Well, now, there's a lot of different ways to spell Eric Toney.
Yeah,
So let's talk about vote Eric Toney.
ERICTONEY.com. You can learn so much more about me and stay in touch, because I'd love to hear from you and the things that are happening in your community or that you'd like to see improved on, because that's what makes us so much better, not just as a candidate, but in these offices, of hearing from you and what you need from our office.
Now, Jermaine, you heard that right. It's not Toney like Tony. It's in Toney. Toney, right? So Eric Toney, he's a candidate for Attorney General. Hopefully, if he gets in, we are not talking about like your grandson having to go through all the drama that your son has had to go through, right? We got to calm these folks down. And it's, from my standpoint, some of these folks need to be put somewhere else so that we aren't not having the same group of people. I can see, everybody gets another chance, right? But if you get the same human being who keeps inflicting, and we got to keep dealing with the same drama, and more families crying, more folks having to go to the hospital, it's just time for some of this drama to calm down.
Honestly, we need to set the politics aside and do the things that help keep people safe. And that's something that I've been able to do as the president of our DA's association, working across the aisle, helping get more resources here in Milwaukee. And that's what I'll continue to do as Attorney General. It's not that we ignore Milwaukee. Milwaukee is crucial to the success of Wisconsin. A stronger Milwaukee is a stronger Wisconsin.
So that means that you will, unlike the current person in the office, you'll actually come back here.
Absolutely. I'd love
after
to.
the election. Okay.
I'd love to come back before the election and
okay.
after
Well,
the
you
election.
can come back before the election and after the election. It might be nice to actually have an Attorney General show up here. So that would be good. And you're going to work with Democrats and Republicans. You are not going to just simply sit back and only work with one side.
Absolutely. I've shown that as a district attorney, as a president of our District Attorneys Association. That's my track record, bipartisan, working across the aisle to deliver real results for
Okay.
Wisconsin.
Well, you can't really argue with that, right? If you're going to work with both sides, because crime has no party.
Well, to be honest with you, Will, it takes for everybody to work together if you really want to solve the
That's
real
right.
issue.
That's right. And we really want to solve it, because I don't want to hear about, look, your daughter's been through and got shot. Your son's been through reckless driving. I don't want to hear about the next generation having to go through some stuff, right? So zero tolerance from here going, right? We'll make public safety, including the Jermaine family, public safety, right? And I don't do hospitals. Right. I'm not trying to do all that.
I just will say I'd love to have everyone's support in this race
Yeah.
and have your vote in November. And you can go to erictoney.com to learn more and contact and stay in touch.
And I know you told everybody before on the trail, and stay healthy, right?
Amen.
Take care of your health.
Don't ignore your symptoms.
There you go. So anything else? Because I know what you're going to do is cut us off.
It's time.
It's time.
I appreciate being with you all. Thank you.
Well, another hour down, right? Another hour down. Okay, now. So WNOV family, until next week, peace out.